we started playing with this term transformational characters to talk about that role of someone that's orienting towards healing, transformation, and repair inside of every system that they're a part of. We're in a time of compounding crises that at their core have a logic to them that seems to be very anti-cooperation, anti our aliveness, feeling, etc. And the unraveling of these crises, we could see it almost as a painstaking process, but I think it actually what's required is a kind of presence and commitment to transformation, of composting the violence of the past and refusing to continue on that path. When I feel like I'm on my own path as a transformational character, I see that the path is really about presence and the ability to face what is, to address what is in the best way that I can from this life, to be willing to be in relationship with others. And that's actually, it transforms the core of what I think is really driving so much of the crises that we're in today. So a transformational character to me is someone who takes on that work and still reaches for others, is willing to be as alive as possible, still willing to be creative and build, still willing to turn towards awe when there's so much fear and terror in the world. And that's what I hope through our work together that we are nurturing inside of people. We're asking people to become a different kind of person and a different kind of people together.
I think for me, as you were talking, what really struck me and stays with me is how integrative this way of conceptualizing personal transformation is. The work of one's own healing, we might talk about as the psychological work or sometimes spiritual work. There's a place where those two wisdom traditions intersect. But what does it actually mean that we are all here on this planet together, our actions and choices having impact on each other, but we don't necessarily acknowledge, address, or figure out ways to improve and actually build relationships across all our differences for the sake of being able to work together for the common good. Transformational character invites that. And the last thing I think that it just comes up for me is the enormous depth of courage that it takes to step into this, and humility to actually recognize, oh, I am a cell inside a larger body, and what happens in me impacts that body, but I don't drive it all. I am part of it.
The four of us often talk about relationship is really the reality. That's really where I draw inspiration from in this work, is getting to dive into the reality of our relationship with the earth itself, the very kind of fundamental, basic human reality of I depend on the earth to feed me 3 times a day. I depend on the earth for the water that I drink, the air that I breathe. I really very much am not an individual, could not meet my own very basic human needs on my own. And recognizing that I'm a part of that system gives me a responsibility, I would say, to understanding what my part is in that ecosystem. And I think it also gives us access to resource beyond ourselves that many of us have been socialized out of believing is possible. And what I really have appreciated about this work and working with all of you is the emphasis that the change that is needed, the courage that you talked about, Alta, that is needed in these times is not always or primarily an effortful courage. It isn't like doing more, getting it right, pushing ourselves harder. It's actually, the move is more of a resting into the reality that we are connected to each other. And there is actually greater resource than what is in my body, in my life experience. There are so many lessons about how life flows in the water, in the trees, you talked about composting, Prentis, like the processes of digestion and transformation that are happening in the leaf pile next to us or in the soil beneath our feet. There's so much to be learned and accessed through starting to hone our attention beyond our own selves into the relationships that are happening all around us, and so much to be learned about just how connected everything is. When one thing changes, everything in the ecosystem changes because everything is connected, everything's feeding off of each other. It is not possible to have something change in an individual and not have that ripple out into all of the things that they're related to.
Hearing awe and humility and terror and belief in these kinds of things, to me, all I hear is body, whether it's us as individuated bodies as Earth or our smaller 4-person body, the relational body, and how do we reorient the relationship of belief and filters with perception, whether it's self to self, self with other, self with systems, because it's so deprioritized inside of the systems we inhabit to have direct perception, direct experience of the physical part of belief, of the physical part of listening, of the orientation of humility as a way to be in and with negotiation of conflict, negotiation of choice, negotiation of power, and all the different kinds of power we have at our disposal. There's a lot of things we can talk about systemically that to me simply boil down to that we're not moving at the pace and at the wisdom of the body collectively. We find it, we catch it, we tune in, but there's so many pressures that are calling on us to move away from the word we use a lot, witness, the multi-directional pathways of perception, of sensing, of feeling, of the unification of how we experience each other that some might call love, some might call care, some might call intention, all the forms. And I love this word witness that we use because it's a call back in without leaving the out. It is always sourcing that relationship as reality inside of something that is so subtle, so intimate, inside of the workings of blood pumping, of nerves firing, of hair growing, that are still in connection with that fish we're trying to catch or that political system we want to see shift. It's very, like we like to say, trembly, right? That place where aliveness really starts to move and where our habits to disconnect from aliveness, forced upon us, taught, or ways we've learned to adapt come in. And that research in the tremble is such a foundational, exciting part of our work